Welcome to our webinar. I'm Caleb Chapman, founder of the Sound House and your host for this evening. Up until very recently, I think most of us were holding out hope that we might return to some sort of normalcy this fall regarding our classes. For many schools, we now know that this will definitely not be the case. I've watched as the social media posts and music education groups have transformed from the mundane, like asking about borrowing music or equipment, to frantic pleas for help navigating a completely altered landscape. Along with the rest of the education world, we found ourselves mostly unprepared for the challenges of taking music instruction online with no warning and no time to prepare. The world is expecting us to do things we were simply not trained to do. It would be easy to go to a place of doom and gloom and maybe with the closing of multiple school music programs be tempted to predict the end of music education as we know it. We are here tonight to assure you that this is absolutely not the case. In fact, all of us from the Soundhouse EdTech team presenting in this session feel exactly the opposite. The current environment created by the pandemic and economic stress has motivated us to finally update a model that has remained stagnant for decades to a new model which holds promise to deliver results with our students like never before. We just have a short time with you tonight, and in that time, my colleagues and I want to give you a glimpse into what is possible right now. We're going to give you access to concrete ideas you can take to your administrators, your parents, and your students to show them you have a plan, that you are embracing technology, and that you can successfully operate a program in whatever climate we find ourselves. More importantly, we'll show you how your program can be elevated long after the pandemic and our global economy have moved on. Tonight, we want to give you a vision of what is possible for your program, whatever it involves, band, orchestra, or choir, students, or adults. And the best part? None of what you will hear tonight is theoretical. These aren't unproven concepts delivered with just a hope that they might pan out. Let me explain. 22 years ago, I opened an after-school music instruction studio in Utah called the Sound House. Our model is entirely built on contemporary ensemble instruction developed to partner with our public schools to offer supplemental performance opportunities. For the last decade, we've had an enrollment of approximately 300 musicians and about 20 different ensembles and have enjoyed great success. Of course, as March rolled around and we were forced to close our doors along with the rest of the country, I began to panic, probably not unlike how many of you are feeling right now. As a small business, I couldn't survive for a month without operating, never mind 3 or 4. I realized I had to come up with a solution not in months, not in weeks or even days, but literally in hours if the Sound House was going to survive the effects of COVID. I spoke with two of my closest advisors, our Soundhouse CEO, Andrew Sermani, and former president of D'Addario, Rick Drum. They both challenged me to leverage existing tools to create an online rehearsal model. I sat down at a computer at lunchtime on March 17th, and 12 hours later, had the detailed plan for a completely new way to rehearse bands and perform without needing to meet in person. 2 weeks later, we launched the model at our Utah Performance Studio. I was hoping to retain at least half of the 300 students. When the smoke cleared, virtually all of them stayed on. Just 1 month later, we added more students, but this time from all around the world, including the Philippines, Australia, the UK, Canada, Japan, and the Netherlands. And with geographic constraints being lifted, we also added some new top-tier instructors, including Sean Jones from the Peabody Institute, Grammy winners Gordon Goodwin, Jeff Coffin from the Dave Matthews Band, Carl Hunter from Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, and Robbie Connolly from The Killers, among others. In short, we've now been running online rehearsals and performances for months with great success, and we want to show you how we are doing it. Now, the question you want to ask right now is what software we have found that lets everyone play together without latency. And the answer is what you already know. That technology does not exist yet. Of course, we don't have the luxury of waiting for that technology. So instead, I decided to break down what we actually do in our traditional rehearsals to see how it could be replicated. When you think about it, a rehearsal is basically a feedback loop. Musicians create sounds together, the instructor listens, and then gives feedback. At that point, the musicians make adjustments, and then the cycle repeats. This is what we've done as far back as any of us can remember. But why do we assume that for this model to work, that the sounds need to be created exactly simultaneously by the musicians? We assume that because we've never known anything different. That was the belief we decided to challenge in this new model. And as you will see, the feedback loop still functions effectively, even though the sounds are not created at exactly the same moment. Now, as you might guess, there are some aspects of the in-person model that can't be replicated online. But by the same token, we quickly learned that the converse is also true. In fact, there are at least a dozen benefits to the model we've developed that are not addressed by our traditional model. Here are some of them to consider. Number one, students learn home recording skills, including how to use a digital audio workstation, or DAW. Two, students cannot hide in a section, creating higher individual accountability. Three, students have the ability to learn from top-tier artists and educators from around the world that they would not normally have access to. Four, performances last into perpetuity online and can be shared with friends and family and used to build student portfolios. Five, educators have an easy and effective way to give individual feedback without embarrassing a student or calling them out. Six, working online allows all students to be able to work up featured solos. Having time for all students to improvise in class is simply not a possibility for most programs. Using an online model, every student can have the opportunity to improvise. Seven, all students have the opportunity to not only record themselves, but also evaluate and correct the performance, which is one of the most effective ways of learning. The online component solves issues created by ensemble size as well. In groups that are too large, no one needs to sit on the bench, as there is no longer a concern of doubling parts. And in groups that are too small, like in some rural areas, students can create multiple performance tracks, allowing them to literally be an ensemble of unlimited size. This opens up an entire world of instrumentation possibilities and opportunities. 9, students have the ability to hear how a part fits into the whole and can isolate any instrument or instruments to be able to understand and analyze a piece of music. 10, thanks to multi-tracking, students can easily create their own original music from home regardless of what instrument they play. 11, students have the opportunity to collaborate and perform with other musicians and ensembles from literally around the world. 12, students listen to sample recordings of pieces as they work through the music that they might not get around to doing otherwise. And the end result of this process can be incredibly exciting and is a real motivation that is desperately needed as we are challenged with student engagement. Here's a clip from a performance we did with some of our Soundhouse staff, recorded entirely from the musicians' homes. So that gives you a little bit of a feel and an idea of what we've been doing here for the last few months. Right now, I'd like to have you actually hear from some of the musicians that have been experiencing this online rehearsal model, and so they can share some of their thoughts with you. So first, I'd like to introduce saxophonist Monique Reed. Monique.
Hey, so for me, one of the things I've enjoyed most about doing this online instruction is just learning how to work in a DAW and how to set up a mic and an interface and how to start laying down tracks. I've always been told that it's really important to learn how to record if you want to start thinking about doing this professionally, but the whole process has always like really intimidated me. But I found through doing this with Soundhouse, it was pretty easy just to sit down and get started. Like I went from not even knowing what an interface was to recording full songs, and it was pretty easy. Like I said, there was always a phone number I could contact, and it's been super great learning experience for me.
Wonderful. Thanks, Monique. And also Daniel Baldwin, another one of our musicians here at the Soundhouse.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. So yeah, like you said, there were a lot of benefits that came as a result of this online process that wouldn't even have been possible with a traditional in-person model. I had a couple main concerns when I first heard about the program. One being, will the kids be able to pick up the process, like the recording process and the software in general? And then the other one being, how is the coordination going to work? You know, like how are we going to keep track of all these parts and have production meetings, talk about the music and make that effective? But I found that virtually everyone within 2 or 3 weeks was already figuring out how to get a good recording on their instrument. They were putting together good tracks, um, and the whole process was much more seamless than I was expecting. So I think it works very well overall.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Daniel. Really appreciate that. So as you can clearly see, what we've found is that the most effective music education model is, in fact, a blended one using the best parts of in-person and online instruction. But in the chance that students are not able to meet, the online portion can be run exclusively to allow rehearsals and performances to continue. With the time we have tonight, we won't be able to go overly in-depth on the many elements of a blended program, but it should be plenty to get you started. Additionally, if you would like more in-depth training to make the most out of this new model, you can visit edtech.ccsoundhouse.com. I'd like to now introduce Gordon Goodwin, Grammy-winning composer and leader of Gordon Goodwin's Big Fat Band, to discuss the rehearsal portion that we have found to be successful.
Thank you, Caleb. Ladies and gentlemen, our fearless leader, Caleb Chapman. You just heard the words of a visionary. That's what's going on here with what's happening. So considering moving our ensembles to the internet, the big issue we face is we have to replace our brick and mortar infrastructure with an online infrastructure. Fortunately, most of our students already have a lot of that technology that they're going to need. They have access to cell phones, desktop computers, laptop computers. And these tools are going to play a vital part in enabling their participation for online music. Now, the good news is, while you and your students could spend substantial money to gear up for this platform, you really don't have to, since there are some really great affordable and even free options available to you. Now, some of these options will be discussed and covered in this webinar, and we can also provide you a list of resources if you want them. But for our purposes today, let's assume you've got the technology you need in order to make music online. What happens next? Now, at Soundhouse, we're currently using 3 different programs to enable our communication as a group. One is the Zoom platform, where we meet every week and discuss the music we are learning. This essentially is how we rehearse as a group. The second program is called BandLab, and here's a slide you can kind of see what that looks like. It's a free program, and it allows students to upload or record up to 16 tracks to an individual session. Now, it is in this environment that we assemble the individual tracks into the finished product. And here is where you as an educator can really assess your students' progress. The third program we use is a social network site called Ambi. And here's what that looks like. On this platform, we have a page where I can upload sheet music, MP3s, YouTube links, or even just put general messages to the students. Ambi is essentially the online equivalent to our Bandroom. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you BandLab in action. Now, as you can see, we have all the students' individual parts here on the left. Up at the top here, I have a reference track. And this is essentially a guide track that students can listen to and kind of use as a stylistic guide. The name of the song is called Tweet Fatigue. And it sounds like this. Okay, now beneath this, we have our click track. Let me turn that on, and you can hear how the click works. You know, the click track, to my way of thinking, it's just one of the most important tools we have to get these students to be able to focus in on the time and playing a good groove. And we're striving for rhythmic accuracy. It's so much easier for them to reference that. Even professional musicians use a click sometimes more than listening to other musicians. Now, okay, now the thing about this program, you can see that I can solo each student. So let's go down here to Nate, who plays the baritone sax, and let's listen to Nate for a minute here. Okay, now let's add Georgia. So you can see that you can really assess each student's progress very specifically, and you can give them specific notes and suggestions. For instance, okay, so if your student is rhythmically imprecise, you can show them, you have a visual representation of the waveform of their part. They can visually see the discrepancy of whether they're rushing or dragging. And I sometimes think that this makes the point, with more efficiently than trying to get them to hear how they rushed or dragged. It's a fascinating thing, but in the end, BandLab is a fairly user-friendly version of a much more complicated DAW. And remember, DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation. And you're going to be able to do most of the recording, editing, and mixing in this platform. If you're unsure about how some function works, they have a tutorial built in, which is really cool. The psychology, I'm going to stop the share here. So the psychology of transitioning to online interaction is a broad topic, to be sure. But I can say that my experience so far has shown that the students' accountability for their own goals, their own improvement, is at a higher level because there's nowhere to hide here. You can't just tuck into the ensemble on a passage you haven't quite mastered like you could do in a live ensemble environment. Now, I know, I did it for years, right? So, but in this program, if you're phoning it in, it's just plainly obvious to everybody. And I look upon that transparency as a good thing and as a road to the students' continued growth, both musically and as people.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gordon. So next we will hear from Tim Sharp, Executive Director of the American Choral Directors Association, on rehearsal applications for choirs. Tim?
Thank you, Caleb, and thank you, Gordon. It's great to be with you all, and especially to represent the choirs in our ensembles in our world that we're working with. Caleb, when I was caught by this, like everyone else, with COVID hit, and we had to sequester and quarantine, I was dealing with a membership of 20,000 choral directors who were, like everyone else, wondering what we're going to do. And very quickly, actually within a week, I turned to a software development company that I had been working with a little bit on online rehearsing and distance learning to develop a product that I want to share with everyone tonight, which I have actually worked with to help them develop. And also we've offered it now to our members in the American Choral Directors Association as a rehearsal platform for everyone. It's called the Choral Coach. And I'm going to share my screen with everyone just so that I can take you through this program. I'm not only director of American Choral Directors Association, I'm also a choral director myself. So I was faced with the same thing everyone else was faced with, and that was, how do I rehearse my choir now that I can't actually get to them face to face? So I worked directly with my choral coach. The group is called Match My Sound. I worked with them to develop this program, and now we offer it to our members. And I'd like to share the screen just to take you through a live rendering of this. And this really has been the answer for us. This is quickly my dashboard for my choirs. As you see here, I have 110 singers in my choir. Let me go back just a second. I want to make sure I am sharing my sound with everyone. I'm going to stop again and go back into share screen. Yeah, I am. Because I want to play an example in just a second. So I have my choir loaded in here, and this program, we've worked with Match My Sound to develop a lot of bells and whistles that we really need as rehearsal techniques. For example, as Gordon mentioned, metronome, background, backing, tracking, so that they can hear the other parts, but also so that they can practice their own part. And the real magic for this program is that I'm able to assign the music to my choir, part by part, person by person, so that they can go in with whether they're a soprano, alto, tenor, or bass. They can be assigned the part that they need to rehearse, and they actually get the part delivered to them. And I'm able to, as Gordon said, I'm able to assess their work and help them as they practice their part. And then, as you can see over here in the sidebar, there's Zoom lessons. I can actually have a Zoom lesson with them, and that same feature, that recording feature, is vital for me to be able to do a virtual choir with them, as you saw earlier in Caleb's presentation, so that we could actually record them and let them present their part, and I can assemble that into a virtual choir. I'm not going to show that right now. What I want to go to is the actual piece that I was working with my choir when we had to shut down. We were working with, I was teaching them the Beethoven Mass in C. And so I loaded the music into this program. Here it is, Kyrie, Gloria, Credo, Sanctus, and Agnus Dei. And going back to my students, I'll show you, here are my singers. They're all loaded into my program, and I'm able to assign each one of the singers, whether they're a soprano, alto, tenor, bass. I'm able to assign their part. They're able to practice that part with a track. They can go over it many, many times. And then the real exciting part, which, picking up on what Gordon was saying, the exciting part to me is they submit their part to me in a final kind of assignment when they feel like they've got it done, and I can actually see their progress. So I'm going to go into the part. Let's just go into the Kyrie part, and I'm going to, as I would have signed the tenors this part, this is what it would look like. And they would actually be able to play this part and learn it from a track. But what I'm going to do, because of time, is just go immediately here to show you what I would do to have them record their part after they've practiced it and listened to the track and gone over it with the track. They're actually able to sing that part into the program, and I'm able to see their progress. So listen a little bit of it. And I'm just going to stop right there just to be safe, because that's a unison and my job won't be threatened by missing any notes here. So look at me. I scored 92% on my sight reading there. And what they're able to submit to me is this little graph in which I see actually that they sang the right notes across that line. And I can also see that right there I went moderately sharp. And so when I go back to practice the score, I can work on the areas that I actually was at fault. If I missed the note, it would have gone into red, or if I missed the rhythm, it would have gone into red. But as long as that line is green, I was singing the right note. So it's quite an amazing, it's quite an amazing program. And it was, for me, the key was, as Gordon said, it's the assessment piece that allows me to see how they're making progress on the piece. And then, of course, they can practice it with all four parts, or they can even, with backing, they can practice the part with the entire orchestra being played as well. So it's been a great rehearsal technique for us, and I share it with everyone as a wonderful sort of rehearsal possibility. As I said, it does have a virtual choir potential for recording, and we'll learn a little bit later about virtual performances. But this program also allows that possibility. So here it is on the screen. It's called matchmysound.com, and we call it My Choral Coach. Thank you for letting me share this with you all, and I think it's just a great possibility for us for online teaching.
Thanks so much, Tim. So just want to make a couple comments before we continue with our program here. Seeing a lot of questions about the resources that we're discussing. We will be sending out an email for you to be able to get access to a long list of resources that we're discussing tonight, including software and websites that can assist with all of this. So be watching for that, and we will make sure you get access to that. Also, at the conclusion of our prepared comments tonight, we are going to leave a half an hour for you to be able to ask your questions to this wonderful panel of our Soundhouse EdTech development team. And so we will be answering questions in the Q&A window as we go tonight. A lot of you have already had your questions answered there, but feel free to add them there as we go, and then also we'll address a lot of those at the conclusion. Right now, we'd like to talk about, just briefly show you a video of something that we've been able to have success with also at the Soundhouse. When you are able to be in person, but maybe have restrictions on the number of musicians that can be in proximity or in a room together. Emma, could you go ahead and pull up that performance video for us? So in order for us to be able to get all the musicians performing together at the same time while honoring the restrictions, we had to spread them out over 3 weeks. You can see we've got that video on the wall. They're able to watch me directly. And we've separated the vocals out into a third room.
Yeah. Why?
So all of these rooms are connected via not only audio, but also video.
Why do you lie? Why?
So this option is actually very affordable with a lot of the tech gear that you probably already have at your school. If you've got any kind of a mixing board, there are a few pieces of equipment required. But as you can see, we imagine that most school facilities, a lot of them will have band, choir, and orchestra rooms. You may not be able to fit a large ensemble in one room, but certainly there's an opportunity to spread them out over multiple rooms. Again, in our resource handout that we're going to be distributing after, we'll give you a list of some of the equipment that would be required to do something like that, in the chance that you are, in fact, able to meet with your students, but not able to have the massive number of them in one room, either blowing it on instruments or choirs where you have singers in close proximity and need to spread those out as well. So be aware that that is another option for rehearsals if you're in a blended or a hybrid scenario. Now we'd like to talk a bit about the challenges surrounding beginning band and orchestra. I'd like to turn some time over to Dr. Peter Boonschaft, Director of Education for Jupiter Band Instruments, KHS America Academic Alliance, also Bob Phillips, composer, author, clinician, and former president of ASTA, and Dr. David Fulmer, Conn-Selmer Educational Support Manager and the retired Director of Bands at Snow College. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Caleb. What a pleasure it is to be here tonight. Among the greatest concerns we have as we approach the start of this school year is how we can start beginning band and string students. Whether it's mouthpiece testing, instrument suitability checks, teaching assembly and disassembly, posture, position, or those crucial first sounds, we can still do everything we did in the past, whether we're teaching online, person to person, or a hybrid of those. I think the most important thing for us to remember, though, is that we have to continue to be that positive spirit in the classroom, whatever shape that may take. That constant source of enthusiasm, that wellspring of motivation and inspiration. Thinking through the process as well as the product of how we teach, leaning on all of the available resources, and basically having a detailed plan for what we're going to do in each of those three scenarios is what we need, what our students need, and especially what our school administrators are looking for. To that end, my dear friends Bob Phillips and Dave Fulmer are going to share some of their ideas for doing just that.
Hi, everyone. There's been a great deal of online discussion about starting beginners. I'm advocating starting with instruments from the beginning, even if you're totally online. Of course, at the beginning of the year, you will need to use video as part of your strategy. It could be live via Zoom or pre-recorded on smartphones. Live has the advantage that you can work with multiple students at once, whereas video clips are one person at a time. Remember, you don't have to see or hear your students very long to evaluate them. All of us could isolate a problem in 10 to 15 seconds of video. You could schedule live sessions by like instruments, which would allow you to model on their instrument in real time. The big issue at the beginning is fitting, sizing, and assembly. It may be helpful to have an in-person meeting with students in small or large groups. For string teachers, tuning is a huge challenge. The easiest solutions are to make sure students have physical or online tuners. Teach a parent or older sibling how to manipulate the pegs, and when students are ready, they can try it. Try creating a tuning video they can reference. Some tuners are free, and you can get any number of them for smartphones, tablets, or computers. Remember that the great leveler in America are smartphones. In the online environment, it may be helpful to put more focus on playing and characteristic sounds and less on literacy and reading. You can jumpstart literacy later, but getting great sounds at the early stages will increase your student success and retention rate while teaching online. Some suggestions or hacks are: use the online video and audio resources available in many method books. They are fantastic. Actually use them. Number 2, create short video clips to teach technique, whatever your particular system is. Create your own backing tracks for tunes or exercises you like. You can play it in yourself or use software such as Band in a Box, GarageBand, and many others. Create echo response tracks so students can hear you play and then they respond. It is especially cool if you can play them on their instrument. Use online technology to have students record their part and then stack them up in a digital audio workstation or DAW, like BandLab, so they can hear themselves in a large ensemble. Then you can go back and hear them individually and make comments, and it doesn't take very long per student to do that. Evaluate students using video at the beginning, but audio the further on you go in the year. Remember, the advantage of using and/or creating video and video archives is that you can ask students to watch or listen to them every day as part of a regular practice, assignment, and routine. If we use all these strategies, there's absolutely no reason we can't have very successful beginning classes using online resources. And now I'd like to pass it off to Dave Fulmer.
Thanks, Bob. Those are wonderful ideas. And I think our invitation to everyone tonight is just to see things a little differently. We already know what the challenges are for online teaching. Let's remember there are wonderful advantages of teaching beginners online. Just a few more ideas, just to hold those short Zoom sectionals for like instruments. Keep that camera on the face and the instrument so the clarinets don't do the hand switch on you. Record those rehearsals for your review later if needed. And it's also so wonderful that you can actually mute the other players if you want to give one person a little bit of extra attention. and the other students can continue to practice. Couldn't do that before. Put the non-playing assignments on Canvas so you're not taking up valuable rehearsal time. Quick reviews are fine in class, either in person or online, but let's avoid making band a general music class. We play music in band. Don't be in a hurry to get to the method books. But when you do get there, make sure you have one that has great online features. And combining music with all of this fun technology is really a plus. They can record themselves, they can play duets with themselves or friends. The play-along tracks, as Bob mentioned, are all terrific tools for us as music educators. And not sure what to do about concerts with these beginners? It's not a problem. You got so many options now. Record some classes playing the tune where everybody's playing the same piece and make a movie to share with the parents. They'll love it. Get very creative and share ideas with your colleagues. Go to those directors you think have really done a terrific job with this so far. Remember, when the beginners are opening their cases, this is going to be brand new territory for all of us. That's a magical moment where it's shiny, but it's also part of their identity. I think most of you are too young to remember the great TV show called Cheers. Remember when Norm walks into the bar, everybody yells his name, Norm! Norm knew two things about that bar. He knew that everybody knew his name, and he also knew that everybody was glad that he came. Let your online band classes, especially those beginning band classes, have the same vibe without the adult beverages. So you look at those wonderful young beginners in the eyes through those cameras, and you say, it is so great to see you. I am so glad that you are in our band. It is so great that you showed up today. Let's get to work, let's be musical, and let's have some fun. Good luck this fall, everyone. Peter, my friend, take it home.
You know, sometimes the greatest challenges can provide the springboard for great possibilities and opportunities if we continue to be the creative, resourceful, and imaginative people we are. But you already knew that because you're music teachers. That's as much who you are as what you do. Just never lose sight of how important you are in the lives of every student you teach. Caleb?
Man, that was fantastic. And I really appreciate the fact, Dave, that you specifically mentioned that adult beverages have no place in these student Zoom calls. So thank you for specifying that. I'm sure all of you watching can imagine how unreal, surreal this is for me to be able to sit on a development team with all of these amazing educators, many of whom have been my mentors and heroes for so many years in my own career. And I'm so grateful that they're sharing all their wisdom and knowledge with all of us here tonight. So want to thank them. Before we move on with our final speakers tonight and entertain some questions, I would love it if all of our participants tonight could take just a moment and comment in the chat. What is the thing that you are most worried about, or the biggest challenge that you're facing as you look at online education this fall or a blended model? What are the challenges that you're most worried about? We would love to hear what those are and see which of those things we can maybe address before we wrap up tonight. While you're doing that, though, it's time to pass the baton over to Dr. Vance Larson, the chairman of the Horn School of Music at Snow College. And he's going to share with you some ideas of creating performance videos for your ensembles. Obviously, there is no payoff for our rehearsals without a performance. And so that becomes absolutely critical that we're giving that experience to our students. Now, that can be done in a few ways, and Vance is going to talk to you about the first of those. Vance? Vance, are you there? We might have lost Vance.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, now we can. Oh, look, there you are. Look at you.
Just had to unmute.
Okay.
Well, let's start by playing the video, and then we'll talk about the video that we're going to use as a reference here.
Memories as we go on through the years.
Okay, so the video that you just viewed was my institution's contribution to the many virtual choir, band, and orchestra videos that were created in the spring of 2020 as the pandemic shut down our campuses. We thought that this was going to be a one-time kind of monument to the difficult times that we were facing, but as we watch here in the United States, in particular, the pandemic grow, I think that we may find that we're in a situation where we can't have live performances, and where maybe we can't even put the full ensemble on a stage to live stream. If we can do those kinds of things, that's great. If we can't, we need a product that represents. We need a product that represents the work that our students have done during the semester. Now, our school has advertised that we're going to be open for business as usual in the fall, but again, the circumstances are changing rapidly. The good news for you is this is a very labor-intensive process from an editing standpoint. However, the good news for you is that if you're using the systems that Gordon and Tim have talked about earlier, if you're doing regular online rehearsals, you're already most of the way there. Can I have the next slide, please? So here are some of the values, I think, with this type of product to represent the work that's done during the semester. Again, if you're rehearsing online, you've already done most of the work. There's some video editing that needs to be accomplished, but these recordings can provide students and parents and administrators with an artifact of the ensemble experience when live or live streaming performances are not possible. The process of creating these videos can improve student engagement. We've already discussed that. It's already been discussed in terms of online rehearsals, leading to an increased ability to achieve higher cognitive functions like evaluation of musical performance. Creating performance videos engages students in current methods of music production and technology. The process helps students remember that they're part of a team, they're part of an ensemble, they're part of a group. And this methodology, as Caleb mentioned earlier, works for ensembles with incomplete instrumentation. In the video that I just showed you, I think that maybe 40% of our students that were in band, orchestra, and choir participated in the creation of that video, but the instrumentation was still complete. Next slide. Here are some examples of equipment and software that you might need. You need audio production software like Pro Tools, Logic Pro X, GarageBand, BandLab, etc. You need some video editing software like Adobe Premiere, Final Cut Pro, WeVideo or PowerDirector. Hardware, the director is going to need a DAW. I wanted to point out that the vast majority of students who participated in the creation of the video that you just watched did it entirely on their cell phones. So it's not necessary. It's really nice if your students had access to a digital audio workstation, but it's not. It won't. Them not having that access won't prohibit you from creating a video like this. And then you'll need access to an online learning management system like Canvas or commercially available programs like Dropbox, Google Drive, or even YouTube. Soundhouse EdTech uses Ambi, where you can submit all of the recordings in one place. Next slide. In terms of process, I'm going to provide you with links that will be given with the materials that are distributed at the end of the webinar. Step-by-step instructions from various sources are included in the resource document. And you'll all get that at the end of the webinar. You can, many of you have done this, so you know that it's possible. I think the most important thing I would want to say about the process, however, is that it's really, really important up front to provide your students with detailed, clear, and easy to understand instructions about recording and submitting their recordings. if you think through that process very, very carefully, you will save yourself a lot of work on the back end in terms of editing the final product. Back to you, Caleb.
Great. Thank you so much, Vance. Now we'll hear from Andrew Sermani, our CEO of the Sound House. He's also the CSUN Music Industry Studies professor and author, and he's going to speak on the opportunity for live streaming performances. So in the off chance that you actually are able to get students together, but not able to have an audience, this makes a fantastic opportunity and solution. Andrew. Andrew, I think you might be muted. Let's see.
Yes. Hi, everybody.
There we go.
I hope you're not getting too much Zoom fatigue, but there's some even better speakers coming up after me, so stay tuned. So right now, because of the COVID situation, we're most likely not going to be able to have live concerts with audiences for the foreseeable future. Our only option short term is to arrange small groups incorporating social distancing while broadcasting the performances via live stream over the internet to parents, grandparents, family, and friends. My university, California State University, is already committed to operating fully online in fall 2020, with a few exceptions for some ensembles. So I'm going to talk about some platforms and also some programs, but I want you to first fill out a survey that is available on the Zoom, which talks about, it should be popping up now. And the questions are, which video conferencing platform, conferencing and or live streaming platforms are you asked to use by your administration? Select all that apply, and you can also put in other. And then the second question is going to be which video conferencing platforms are banned by your administration. And we're going to share these results and pass it on after the webinar to everybody who've attended. All right. Moving on. Points to consider for webinars. You have to use a video camera or a computer or a smartphone or a tablet. Any one of these will work. Obviously, a better quality camera will be best for the situation. And also preferably with an external microphone. It's very important to make sure you're hardwired to the internet or using an Ethernet connection. Wi-Fi is not a very stable platform to operate a live stream in. Here are some of the live streaming services that are available. Zoom, teachers and students can get free accounts by filling out a K-12 verification form. Google Meet, this is built into the Google for Education suite. It includes a teacher lounge. Facebook Live, it's the easiest and most direct way to stream your school video. Also the Spin Network. The Spin Network is a great service because schools and organizations can set up a channel on this site for free. There's never a charge for licensing or for uploading videos. And when you post your videos there on the site, the sync rights and are cleared before they are posted for almost 90% of the copyrighted music. There can be a slight delay to clear some music that's not pre-approved. And when you post a live stream, the sync rights and performance right are cleared. The use of a master recording in a live stream is a broadcast and is cleared through the appropriate PRO, Performance Rights Organization license, and is cleared for use on the Spin Network. Both recorded videos and live streams posted on here are a way for you to monetize your channel as well in broadcasting your videos and live streams to the outside world. And we'll send you more information about that after the webinar. Best of all, that site is legal, which means that the composers and publishers will be compensated and you will not be sued for posting illegal content online. In terms of copyright and legal issues, a live stream involves the following copyrights: the right to perform music, you'll need a performance license with the PROs, the right to synchronize music with video, live or pre-recorded, you need a synchronization license, and if you're using someone else's recording, you'll need a PRO license for that to broadcast as well. Most popular live streaming platforms such as YouTube, Facebook, Instagram Live, SoundCloud, and Twitch are licensed by ASCAP, one of the PROs, performing rights organizations, but only on the performance side because it includes a right for performance and also synchronization right. And there's always a possibility that YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram could flag or mute or shut down any live stream playing copyrighted music, or an ad could be placed on it. That's it for me.
Great.
Back to Caleb.
Thanks, Andrew. We're going to go ahead and let's see. Bob, are you up next?
Sure.
Okay, and then I think we've got, we're going to hear from Alyssa. But Bob, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about some of the other opportunities for creatively introducing different types of music?
Well, hello, and thanks for joining us today. In my 28 years in the classroom, I ran a number of non-classical or eclectic music ensembles, as well as a chamber music program. I'd like to talk to you about the exciting possibilities that online technology provides us when working with existing or new eclectic ensembles. Online technology can allow us time for ensembles outside the curricular day, such as jazz band, show choir, mariachi, rock groups, Latin bands, steel drum band, hip hop groups, fiddle groups, chamber music, and more. You don't have to be limited to just one group style or genre. Using online technology, you can schedule groups to meet at the convenience of students and/or coaches' schedules. They can be one time or multiple times, one at a time or multiple times. Think how many problems that solves for us. My wife and I actually taught time management classes and strategies to our fiddle groups each year just to solve that problem. If we're not experts in a certain type of music, online technology makes it so easy to use outside expertise. Short or long-term coaches or mentors can be engaged to help with style, traditions, improvisation, composition, as well as specific instrument or voice challenges. It's so liberating to know that I don't have to be the source of all knowledge. Online technology also allows for mass student participation. Often in the past, participation was limited by scheduling and transportation. The beautiful thing is that any student from inside or outside the school population can participate. There's no need to be limited to what classes they're in. What is really cool is that the groups do not have to be dependent on perfect instrumentation. That can be solved with online technology and students' ability to record multiple parts. You as a teacher do not have to be the sage on the stage, but can become a facilitator of these groups. Your time does not have to be one-to-one, nor do you have to be an expert. You just need to provide some organizational expertise and motivate the students to participate, which is what all of you are good at anyway. What an incredible way to meet the needs of all students. In addition, it is such an easy way to empower students, varied composers and creators. In fact, literature resources will be provided to you upon request from this webinar. It is also just a great opportunity to develop student leaders who can run the ensemble. Everyone in the group can and should take ownership of the product. Students' creativity can really be set free. In my 43 years of teaching students, I found that the only thing that limited them was me. Truly, I've never been more excited in my entire life about the possibilities for the future of music education. I will leave you with two thoughts I had every day as a teacher. First, I wanted to teach for 30 years, but I did not want to teach the same year 30 times. Second of all, the most important question I asked myself every day as a teacher was, am I preparing students for my past or for their future? Thank you, and I hope you and your students have a great year.
Thanks so much, Bob. So along that same vein, this new model also allows us the opportunity to introduce more culturally responsive music programming, which of course is very timely and important in the national dialogue right now. We'll now hear from composer, educator, and performer, Alyssa Jones from Jones Creative and Consulting. Alyssa, thanks for jumping in with us tonight.
No problem. Hello, can everybody hear me?
We can.
Wonderful. I'm a choral director and vocalist by trade and training, so I'm going to gone ahead and be loud. I'm seeing some comments about volume, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm really, really excited to be here. Super excited to be after Bob. Thank you, Bob, for teeing it up. I really appreciate those closing comments. So much exciting stuff today, right? So we heard about mitigating instrumentation issues, social distancing, rehearsals, which looked like I wish I had a school to go back to. I would totally do that. Tools like BandLab, Choral Coach, Match My Sound, students having the opportunity to learn tech skills that open up entire new career options, right? These are exciting things that we've heard about today, and they're revolutionary. My job is to kind of get us thinking about how to revolutionize repertoire for all ensembles, both typical and, to quote Bob, eclectic. So we're going to go ahead and do the slides here. So I'm going to be talking about culturally responsive music programming, which, you know, is part of the movement for culturally responsive education writ large. So culturally responsive teaching, right, across content areas acts on a deep belief that every lived experience, every single lived experience in a classroom is, oh, can we change that slide? Great, thank you. That every single lived experience in a classroom is as important as those we are taught to teach, right? And those that we identify as our own. So as culturally responsive music teachers, we have to program music that affirms and communicates and inspires in others this belief, right? We don't question respecting our students' humanity. What we have to remember is that their personal musical experiences, wherever they come from, are an essential element of that humanity, just as it is ours. So we have to resist the urge to assign value to our students' musical identities in the context of the canon or our own musical identities. So in other words, what we value is great. We need to make space, a lot of space in our classrooms for what our students value, even if that doesn't align with how we were raised musically or how we were raised to be music teachers. So in order to be culturally responsive, we have to understand and respect the lives and musical lenses that we're responding to in the classroom. We have to build our curriculum on music that treats all musical traditions in the room as equally as important as those we are taught to teach and those we identify as our own. Culturally responsive music programming is one element in a larger practice through which we question the canon. I said question, don't throw it out, just ask it a question, and confront our personal paradigms to create safe spaces for all of the identities in the room to actively engage each other in deep, meaningful, and transformative ways. I'll say that again. Our job as music teachers, and we have a unique platform to do this, is to make space for every human in the room to explore and discover, appreciate, and engage with each other's humanity. We get to do that through music, which is super exciting, right? It's why we became musicians. We have to think beyond inclusion. We have to think beyond including diverse composers and diverse styles alongside the canon as, here we go, you ready? A fun way to practice what we teach through the canon. Those are crowd pleasers, right? A way to make others feel welcome. That's about recruitment and audience development, right? And or celebrating cultural milestones and observances, which is about compliance. These, we don't want to use these words or admit them, crowd pleaser, recruitment, compliance, but that's a lot of times why we're checking that box of including diverse composers, including diverse repertoire alongside the canon. I like to think of those things as core, right? There are a couple of resources out there that can help you. I'm going to share one with you, and I think that we'll get a chance to, you'll see the link at some point later on, but I'm going to share my screen here in a second. We love the Zoom, don't we? Here we go. Just getting back to that. Come on, screen. There we go. And here it is. So we're going to go and visit the Institute for Composer Diversity. And I've had a great honor to participate in this project for a time. they have these databases. There's a composer database and a works database. And I just want to show you quickly. It's not just for, it started as a professional ensemble, a symphony orchestra resource, and now it is pretty much for everybody. All levels are represented. We have state MEAs populating it with lists as well. But you can select criteria. I'm not going to click through it. I'll let you all explore that on your own. Select criteria based on demographics, location, genre. And what happens is once you, oh, let's do it. Let's do it. So let's say woman, orchestra, and we'll skip medium. Let's do African and Black. And let's skip this just because I don't know what I don't know. And search, and you get all of these composers. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of composers in this, right? And also thousands upon thousands of works. So this is just one resource available to you. If you're looking for repertoire for your typical ensemble, for eclectic ensembles, you know, we kind of know where that is. If you're going to do a jazz band, there are resources for that. But for those of us looking for choral resources, band resources, etc., it's a really, really great space to find that repertoire and get hold of it somehow. So, as I said, we have to think beyond including diverse composers and styles alongside the canon as a fun way to practice what we teach through the canon. We have to believe that this vast world has more to value, more that works for teaching than the canon, right? That the canon is not the alpha and the omega, but one lens among many. In other words, how many different genres can you use to teach and practice long tones? Probably all of them, right? Are pure Latin vowels the only ones that can be unified? Maybe not. Crowd pleasers don't teach respect for culture. It's programming without deep context, right? You pop a crowd pleaser on, it's about getting those claps. What do you do in that classroom that teaches your students about the culture that you're exploring, right? One example that I use is Once on This Island. Lots and lots of folks program Once on This Island, music from it, the whole musical, without talking about where the culture comes from. What is it about colorism on the islands? What is it about the Orisha on the islands? You have to teach the whole thing, okay? Diverse programming, diverse repertoire is core worthy and it builds skills, right? Ultimately, culturally responsive music programming is part of a larger practice that places the what and the how of music making in service to the why. It's a statement of belief that all things about your students are equal. They're equal to those implicitly valued through the canon. They're equal to those that you experienced yourself. It's about holding equitable space for these things, not just in the products, the what, but also within the process, how, and our interactions with each other, which is the why. Because ultimately the why is the most important reason to practice culturally responsive teaching. It is, after all, the reason we became music makers ourselves. Music helped us understand our personal why to make the world make sense. So as culturally responsive music teachers, we lead our practice with the question, why? Why am I teaching this? Why am I teaching it this way? For each of those questions, ask yourself why until you get to your true final answer. And if it resonates with the lives in the room, move forward. And if not, take a step back, reflect, and respond culturally.
Fantastic.
Hope that helps.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you so much, Alyssa. It's so great to have you with us tonight. Our final presenter tonight is my dear friend, Mary Jo Papich, co-founder and former president of the Jazz Education Network, or JEN. She's going to share with you how to pay for all this great new technology, because I'm sure one of the things you're thinking as you're sitting there listening to all this is, how am I supposed to find the money for software and gear for live streaming, and all of the rest of this. And the great news is we've got some good ideas on that. So Mary Jo, why don't you help everybody out on that?
My pleasure. But first of all, I have to say, just wow to everybody, not only the panelists who are just saying wonderfully brilliant things. And a lot of these things don't cost money. So make sure we do those too. And the participants, I'm trying to speed read and catch up with all the questions, and I can't, there's so much. So kudos to you guys for being here. But as Caleb said, I'm sure your head is spinning going, how am I going to afford this technology? And I'm going to say, how can you afford not to explore the options of having technology work for you so those ensembles can play together? So I was a band director and some vocal and also a fine arts administrator for over 35 years. And so if I was working with you, I want to look at possible funding sources, and I'm going to just go over a few of them. Sharon, if you can put that slide up there for me, please. So you can absolutely go to your band, orchestra, choir budgets. I notice we have a lot of general music teachers on tonight, and my heart is with them because I did that also. I think they were the hardest. So in a pandemic, all is fair game, truly. So look at all that. Look at also your new music budgets. Look at, you can live without that new music, truly. You look at the new instruments, look at instrument, anywhere you can get funding and take from. But I really think you could probably get a bulk of it from your technology budget. Your technology budget is usually a building or a district budget. So talk to your IT boss in your building or your school, and if they did apply for the CARES Act, which the deadline's fast, but there's tons of money in that too. So check technology budget, please, because you can buy equipment. And then I'm going to ask you to check your professional development budget with your district, because you can get some training and online certification to be able to do the things we're talking about. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about that in future sessions. If you're fortunate enough to have a parent organization, the parent organization is there to help you. Ask for support. Ask for support. Don't forget there are donors in the community, especially in community ensembles, but again, lean on your parents, lean on the businesses, look at donors to help you out. If you have no budget, and that is very possible because I have been there too, look at Title I and Title IV-A grants. The 4A grants, literally, the federal government has allotted $1.6 billion to support students and academic enrichment. And in that area listed, it includes technology materials, it includes professional development, and it actually lists music education. So those are due July 31st, and we'll have another session on that just for that and have some pros in. So those are my words of wisdom. However, I have to do one thing, because today is June 30th, and it marks the day that Caleb Chapman, our dear friend and past president of the Jazz Education Network, is ending his 9 years of volunteer service to our organization. And our organization, as Andrew knows, he's a former president, is in such good shape now. I am telling you, he has given and volunteered his time, his energy, his talents. I'm going to say his brilliance, because I could be his fan club president. He has been amazing. And I guess I want to say to you, if nothing else tonight, if you have met Caleb and you start following what he does and be a part of, as Gordon said tonight, he's a visionary. He is shaping the future of music education. literally, with these amazing ideas. He's kept in touch with me over all this, and I'm just saying you can trust him and you can believe in him, and he surrounds himself with people that can make things happen and get you the help you need. So thank you to Caleb, and I'm going to say thank you to all of you teachers and musicians out there who have survived the pandemic this spring and are here wanting even more, wanting the best for your students as they come back or not this fall. And my heart is with you, and kudos to all of you.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Look at you embarrassing me. Jeez, come on. Well, that brings us to the conclusion of our comments, our prepared comments tonight. We're going to actually open up to our panel to address some of the questions that you've posted, and especially the concerns I want to address that you put in the chat window. And I'm going to ask a few of our panelists to speak to those things. So one of the concerns that I'm seeing several people talk about is fall recruitment. Oh, and we're going to get to more questions and comments. Okay, well, there you can see right there. If you do have questions and comments that we don't address in this time tonight, you can email us at support@ccsoundhouse.com, and we will be happy to answer those questions for you. But Emma, you can go ahead and cancel that screen share so we have our panel up on the screen here. There's one of the concerns that I'm noticing here that a lot of people have talked about is the time it takes for audio and video production, especially video and access to technology. So let's just talk about that for a moment. And Vance, we're going to actually probably have you chime in. Are you still there with us? Yeah, there you are. And then Peter, I'm going to have you comment on this as well, based on some of your wife's experience. Certainly, the time required to create audio and video performances is substantial. Do you have any suggestions, Vance, for them on being able to do that?
Some of the resources that are listed in the document that will be emailed to all of you have some of the resources have support functions that will help you with those kind of time-intensive editing tasks. Again, if you're doing regular online rehearsal, you pretty well have accomplished the audio editing portion of this process. So if the online rehearsal became part of your weekly procedure, you would have the product would be a recording of a virtual ensemble. It is time intensive and time consuming. Without support, you as a teacher would be wise to limit the amount of repertoire that you tried to cover. I think that fewer well-produced and well-recorded products would be better than trying to wear yourself completely out and doing an hour's worth of music, because you are correct. If it's all up to you and you have to do all the editing, it's very, very time and labor intensive. But again, I would encourage you to look at the options that are available for services that may help you with that process and take that burden off your shoulders.
Great, thank you, Peter.
I think one of the challenges Vance just spoke to, and that is limiting the scope of what you're doing. I think one of the things that I would like to mention is that anyone who's attempted this, we've tried to create this video audio presentation, much like we saw earlier today, and that is very labor intensive, the hours necessary to do that. And so if we think of possibly doing some just as audio tracks to help with the pedagogy, because I think, as was said so eloquently tonight, we were all thrown into this with precious little time to prepare. And now that we've had that time to prepare, that we can think of ways that we can think about the process more, we can think about rehearsing, we can think about how we can affect what the students are learning in ensemble and in performance modes, more than just trying to get that product done, which is an incredibly labor-intensive thing. So I think we could think of ways, especially some of them that we've talked about tonight, of using video or audio as teaching tools and worry less about that final product. I think we need it. I think it's essential because our administrators want it, parents want it, students want to revel in what they've accomplished. I think we do need that. But I think what I'd like to see is the emphasis put more on how we're affecting the students, how we're affecting their lives, how we're teaching pedagogy, how we're teaching all of those things that make them a complete and literate musician, a culturally sensitive and an emotionally sensitive human being. And those are less about the actual final product of having that incredible thing for them to have, which they need. But I think we could think about many of the ideas that were suggested tonight to think more about the teaching rather than that final product.
Wonderful. Also, we certainly went to great lengths to make sure that our presentation tonight was packed with information. We hope you found it valuable. The last thing we wanted was for this to feel like a commercial in any way, shape, or form. But part of the reason we did assemble this team is because we realized that assembly of the audio and video is incredibly labor intensive and time intensive. And the whole purpose of Soundhouse EdTech is to make it so that teachers can do what they know how to do, which is teach and be a plug and play solution. And so I'd encourage all of you that are interested in getting some support, ongoing support for any of these ideas, and certainly support on creating the audio and video component of your program this year, to look into the Soundhouse EdTech offering. We've tried to make it very affordable for you and a real aid so that you feel like you have an ally and you're not being left alone in this. We have another great question, and Zach, I'm going to ask you to address this. Zach Borman is one of our technical leaders here at the Soundhouse. There's a question, a lot of the music that was seen tonight in the videos was a constant tempo. And the question is, does that mean that you are only limited to tunes that have a consistent tempo that you can set a metronome to? What are the options for being able to create an orchestral piece or a concert band piece where there are tempo changes? How does that take place in an online format? Zach?
Yeah. Can you hear me, Caleb?
We can, yes.
Awesome. So something that's very, very doable is stretching the time of these pieces or even reference tracks that you have to fit to a click track, a consistent tempo. And you can create these click tracks inside of, say, Pro Tools or a DAW that have the tempo changes, and then you just load those up into BandLab for the band to follow. And we've actually, I think that the recordings that we've shown you, we had to stretch to fit to a click track. And, once we got it done, it took me about 10 minutes to do some of these things. And, it was done, and then, we moved on, and yeah.
Great, wonderful. Also, you don't need to feel like you can only do pieces that are on a consistent tempo. What we do for Soundhouse when we are doing pieces that have tempo changes or rubato sections is we actually will go in and manually record a click for that has the changing tempo to it. And we put that in as a reference click track for the musicians to be able to rehearse to. So certainly you're not limited to consistent tempo pieces, and it is very doable. And all of this stuff, which sounds foreign and difficult and crazy, gets very easy very quickly. Before we take the next question, I want to assure all of you, a lot of people I've heard educators say, well, this sounds like it might work for my college students or maybe high school students, but there's no way I'd be able to get my junior high or beginner students doing this. I need to tell you that we brought our 300 students online in the course of a week with no preparation, with no idea of what we were doing, and they certainly had no idea. It was the junior high musicians that picked it up the fastest, faster than the high school kids. We had over 100 junior high age musicians working in a DAW online, recording from home within a week. So this is very doable, and please don't be intimidated or overwhelmed with it, okay? Another question that we have here is that, Tim, there are a lot of questions regarding the choir software, and kind of if it has limitations in the K through 12 setting, and also on the cost. Can you just briefly speak to that, please?
Yes, thanks, Caleb. Because of their agreements with different publishers, and I see a lot of people in the comments are talking about licensing, and that's a big issue in copyright. Because of their licensing agreements, Match My Sound has a different agreement with Hal Leonard that they do specifically for K through 12 schools. So you need to go through Match My Sound and talk to them directly about their K through 12 because it deals with purchase orders, and it deals with the way they're working with the copyright holders, but it's the exact same software. It's just branded differently. So if you talk to Match My Sound, ask about K through 12, and if you're not concerned about K through 12, you can come through ACDA, and we deal with others, community choirs, church choirs, and so on. So, and college choirs. But K through 12, that particular, let's call it market, because of copyright issues, goes through Hal Leonard. Now, the program is $50 until the end of this year, and that's in response to this crisis. That's what they've done for us, and it's almost at cost for them to do that. There will be some kind of derived cost for Match My Sound, the choral coach, after the 1st of 2021, but that has not been published yet, and I think they're still trying to work out what the fair market price would be. I am told that that's going to be a one-time fee, not a yearly annual license, and I think that's a big deal. If you're already dealing with licensing and so on, just the idea of purchasing it for forever is a much better prospect than a renewable license. So I say if you're K through 12, work through Hal Leonard and talk to MatchMySound.com directly about their K through 12 license and their program, and otherwise you can come through ACDA to find it for churches and community choirs and college and university choirs. I also saw a note from Canada. If you're Canadian, they're working with Canada for a license specifically for Canadian choral musicians, and that will be separate, but it's the same program. It'll come under probably a different branded name, but it's the same people that are developing the program.
Great. Thank you so much, Tim. Gordon, the next question I'm going to pass to you. There's a lot of concern, as we all know, at the end of last school year, our students were experiencing significant Zoom and screen fatigue. And the concern is being able to keep musicians, students engaged in the process. How do we keep them coming online and connecting with each other and being able to be participating and engaged? And you've had some real success with this already in your Soundhouse ensemble. If you could share some of the things that have worked for you, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, it is a real issue because just imagine sitting in front of a screen all day, and they're going to be doing more and more of that, not just for music education, and just looking at a talking head going on and on, however interesting it is, it's a rough thing. So at Soundhouse, first of all, we had developed a culture or a kind of a code of ethics for Zoom participation. And so just some basic guidelines that sometimes we don't think about. For instance, you're going to be like this, so I can read your face. I can read you. You're not going to be back here. You're going to get dressed. You're not going to show up in your sweats or your pajamas. You're not going to eat during our meeting. You can have some water if you want. You're not going to double task like I've been doing a little bit during the session as texts have come in. But you're not going to do that because the whole thing is that we are here for the music, and that we are asking for commitment. So that means that so we're totally present during that hour that we meet every week or however long it is. The other thing is I've definitely taken the first 10 to 15 minutes and we talk about the issues of the day. I ask them, tell me the worst thing that happened to you this week and the best thing. And we'll go around the room and we will create the community that normally we would do in real life in a room. And the internet is the great divider. Sometimes it's a shield, that people use to hide behind, and we try to engender. I think I use the word transparency. So if I'm soloing their tracks and it sounds a little bit rough, And believe me, professional musicians do not enjoy that experience, in the studio. But we try to have like the message that we're all on the ladder one way, one place or another, and that we just need to stop pretending to be what we are not. Release yourself of the burden of having to pretend that you know more than you do, and that you're going to have good days and bad days. And so we talk a lot about that. Even sometimes I did half the hour talking about the protests, and talking about COVID and talking about the different stress. And then I had a kid come in and talk about his roommate who, or not roommate, it was a neighbor that just died of some arthritic, immune system disease, and she was 13. And he told this story, and everyone else is talking about the rough day I had this because this didn't happen, or and this kid talked about that story, and all 20 of us went towards this kid. And I'm kind of tearing up thinking about the vulnerability that he led with. And so moments like that were such an incredible bonding experience. So I think that I found that I have to use the force of my personality a little bit more to reach through the internet and try to get to those kids that maybe are inherently a little bit shy or reticent, So it's a work in progress, without a doubt. But between those kind of things and the use of multimedia, and I'll put a YouTube link and I'll go, let's listen to this track. Now let's listen to this track. What do you like more and why? Or I gave them an assignment like, I said, so you're in a band and you've got an old friend that's been in the band, and he starts to not play very well, and he's hurting the band. What's your obligation? Is it to your old friend of 10 years, or is it to making the music as good as possible? Do you fire him? Do you, so I'm presenting some real life things that are not just about the nuts and bolts of music. So far, those are kind of some of the things that I've done to try to connect us.
Fantastic. Thanks, Gordon. Alyssa, I'm going to ask you to chime in here. We've got a lot of great feedback from your presentation. For those directors that are interested in incorporating some of these additional styles, where can they get started as far as resources and finding literature? And I'm curious, you said that there were possibly some styles that you didn't need to play long tones to master them. And I would love to study those because I'm really sick of playing long tones. So actually have anything along those lines.
Right. Well, I mean, what I said was you can use any style of music to learn long tones, right? Every kind of music, right? You're gonna have to do long tones, dude.
What I heard from that is there's no escaping them ever.
No, not for any of us. On any instrument, there's some version of long tones none of us wants to do. So in terms of, I'll just rattle off some publishers. Well, so for large ensemble music, specifically large instrumental ensemble music, that composerdiversity.com is where the Institute for Composer Diversity database lives. They're working on building out the chamber music and the chamber works database. So that's coming soon. And then also I think by the end of the year, a choral database will be available as well through there. So that's one-stop shop, right? So to find, and the fact that it's that searchable database, that's a really great space. I would recommend looking for some smaller shop publishers and publishing houses, and I can assemble those and kind of stick them on that blog that I shared. I'm a jazz person, right? So my big thing, as much as I love enormous choirs and conducting them and having all of that sound in my hand, I'm really, love working with vocal jazz ensembles. And I found that Sound Music Publications has some of the best entry-level vocal jazz rep, right? So if you've got that group of, 8 to 24 singers that you want to know what to do with, Sound Music is great. UNC Publications is the next level up, generally. I like that stuff better than the stuff I find on Pepper, even though there's some cross, just because it's coming from, folks that are still playing out there and still performing out there, the stuff on Sound Music Publications. So, it's a little bit closer to home and a little bit closer to practice than some of the stuff I find in the publishers. there is a resource out there called Decolonizing the Music Room, and that's on the list. Is it okay if I tell them my website to go to that's got that blog? Is that all right?
Absolutely, yes, of course.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and type it for everybody, all panelists and attendees there. So if you go to my website, jonescnc.com, one of the pages is a blog that I just started, and it's not sexy. I'm not talking a lot about stuff, but I just listing things as I find them. And so Decolonizing the Music Classroom is one of the places on there. It's a really great space for general music folks looking to find a diverse repertoire. So, you know, those are just some of the places, but what I suggest is really going ahead and go deep, like turn to the second page on the Google search when you're looking for stuff. And then you can always just, you know, reach out to me and other folks to try to figure out, you know, what are you using, right? If you want to do funk tunes, right, there's not a lot published. That's where everybody use a unison chart. Everyone wants your unisons to sound great, right? Do a unison chart and then figure out arrangements. Do head charts if you have to. But the point is to just, you know, kind of look a little deeper for the resources. Avoid the big ones because they're not going to have, even if they have titles, they're not going to have it at the level of authenticity that you want all the time. That's
Wonderful.
my 2 cents.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alyssa. I also want to add, in addition, in our resources that we'll be sending out, Soundhouse has actually gone ahead and published. We have about 80 very accurate transcriptions of contemporary tunes for rock and pop ensembles, for large rock and pop ensembles, for a similar instrumentation or a number of musicians that you might find in a jazz band. So between 12 and 18 members. And we will actually send you a link to those publications as well. So before we wrap up, and we are just about to do that, I want to go back to Monique and Daniel, and just if you could just quickly share with us, you know, the biggest challenge that you've had in moving on to online, and maybe the biggest surprise. I know I'm surprising you guys with that, but Daniel, we'll start with you. So what was the biggest challenge for you, and how long did it take you to bridge that hurdle?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned this before, but like the whole coordination deal, like learning how to work with other people online in this new setting that we have, which of course is very valuable for anyone to develop, and this is a great way to develop it. I think I say that because my skills in that regard have certainly improved, and yeah, it just took a few weeks until I was a lot more comfortable with, you know, the video conferencing situation, and specifically with making music with others remotely. So yeah.
Fantastic. And Monique, the same question for you?
Yeah, I'd say honestly, one thing was just listening back to your part and kind of feeling frustrated that it wasn't where you wanted it to be. So for example, like intonation, or like seeing that I'm just a hair early on this beat. But in the same regard, that's also improved my musicianship a ton. I feel like I'm way more aware of my intonation now. I'm way more aware of where I am in regards to the beat. And so it was hard at first, but I've also improved a lot from it.
Excellent. Well, we'd like to thank all of you for joining us tonight. We hope that you found these new ideas as exciting as we have. I'm so grateful to have this incredible team that you've just heard from, pushing the envelope on what will be possible in music instruction, not just today, but rolling well into the future. As we mentioned earlier, if you'd like to learn more about Soundhouse EdTech or receive information regarding detailed training on any of the topics we covered, please visit edtech.ccsoundhouse.com. Music education is currently facing the biggest challenge of our lifetime as we battle limited access to our students on one front and massive budget cuts on the other. But you are not alone. Instead of curling up in the corner and admitting defeat, let's instead look at all of this as the opportunity to not simply preserve music education, but expand it, improve it, and elevate its standing in our communities. Let's think beyond just solving the challenges of today and instead continue to dream about innovations and possibilities that will carry us into an amazing future for music. Once again, thanks to our incredible panelists tonight. Thanks to all of you for joining us from the Soundhouse EdTech team, and good luck with all of this. We know you're going to knock it out of the park. So thank you so much and have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye, everybody.